Hello and welcome to my latest presentation of my new video and discussion series called The Peripheral Perspective. I will admit I had a total blast putting these slides together for you, all about the gifts and challenges of the human design fifth line profile. So if you yourself have a fifth line in your profile, either conscious or unconscious, or if you have fifth line beings in your life, then I invite you along for this journey, which is bound to be colorful and visually stimulating. I never know what is going to come out of my mouth at any given time. So let us have an adventure together today. I have introduced myself a little bit more in depth in other presentations, but just to give you a little glimpse, my name is Melanie Halpert. I am a 5-1 quad-right splenic projector, so I'm super intuitive. I am here to guide and advise those who recognize and invite my guidance. I like to dig deep, and then when I'm ready to share, that's when I get my message across. In terms of what defines me, I am both a channel of perfected form, channel of the alpha with a sun. My sun is in gate 50. Bringing the values, and I've got 11 gates in the quarter of duality, meaning that my purpose is truly fulfilled through bonding with the correct others. And in my design, I have 9 fifth lines, which you will see as we go through this presentation is a pretty big deal. I've been in the field of holistic health for 20 years. I've been a certified body talk practitioner, helping people with all kinds of pain and ailments and life path stuff since 2008. I'm a certified Living Your Design guide and also a human design analyst in training. So before we get really into the meat of my presentation today, I wanted to bring something back from one of my first videos. It was a video that I did all about the manifestor projector relationship. And I had included in that presentation a quote. And in fact, it was something that I had written in I think something that I wrote in a private Facebook thread, somebody who was asking about mechanics, like what does it mean when you say what is honoring mechanics? Because we talk a lot about mechanics in human design, and for me anyways, it's truly the most important thing, because when mechanics are correct, everything flows, everything works. So in response to a question, what I had said about that was honoring mechanics is like honoring your own personal law of gravity and understanding the way that law of gravity meets the world. For me anyways, above and beyond strategy and authority, understanding the way my aura operates and aligning to the role of my profile has been revolutionary. When we're able to appreciate everything as mechanics, it allows us to stop taking things personally and to course correct, not only in our overall approach to life, but in our relationships as well, so that we experience ease and flow rather than resistance. So as you can see, I underlined aligning to the role of my profile, because as you know, if you've been experimenting with your design, it always comes back to strategy and authority. However, the missing piece, really the missing piece in fine-tuning so many things for me, things that had been elusive, like you would not believe, has really been to align to the role of my profile as a 5-1. It's been huge in my experiment. And this is one of the reasons why I want to share this stuff with you, because maybe, even though there are things that I'm going to be talking about that you might already know, there might be certain things that are just going to kind of click things into place that help either you in your own experiment or also in understanding people in your life who happen to carry the fifth line. So in human design, we talk enormously about type, strategy, and authority. If you never learn anything about human design, you don't study it at all, but you just want to use it to fix your life, The only things that really are essential are understanding your type, your strategy, and your authority. But in addition to that, if you really want to go further, understanding profile is exponential, because profile is the costume that we wear. Whether you're a manifester, whether you're a generator, whether you're a manifesting generator, whether you're a projector, whether you're a reflector, whatever your profile is, on top of that is like the costume that you wear. There are 12 different profiles. In our presentation today, we're really going to be focusing on 4 out of the 12. Not really even going into depth about those profiles, but really working with the 4 profiles that have a 5. So whether it be 5-1, 5-2, 2-5, or 3-5, all of those will be relevant to this presentation today. Now, I went to Jovian Archive, which is one of the, serious and official resources if you want to learn about human design from the original messenger, Ra'uruhu, the way that it was delivered. I went there so that I could borrow this image, because it's a very, very powerful image that talks a little bit about the energy behind each of the 6 lines. So for those of you who have a bit of a background in human design, you know that a large component of the system ties into the 64 hexagrams of the I Ching. And in the hexagram structure, there are always 6 lines. So when we talk about profile, this is something that is working with a more generic concept in looking at each of the 6 lines of a hexagram. You'll see in the next slide, I do have an image about that. But for now, I just want to explain a little bit about the 5th line profile. And so the image you see here is of a house. And when we're talking about the hexagram with its 6 lines, it's kind of like a 2-story house where there's a first floor and there's a second floor. And without going into detail about the 1 and the 2 and the 3 and the 4 and the 6, you can see where there is an arrow and a circle in yellow there. And there's this window up on the 2nd floor with a kind of this figure, mysterious figure behind a window. And so the 5th line carries the name of the heretic. We're going to be discovering more about the heretic, and also a little bit more about why there is this figure that is behind the window here on the 2nd floor. So the truth is that the 5th line is a profile of projection. And taken directly from the definitive book of human design, the 5th line is the mysterious curtained 2nd-story window with expectant spectators outside. So each of those profiles, 1 through 6, they all have a certain frequency, a certain energy, and the 5th line really is this mysterious figure that is kind of hidden from public view. But there are all of these people that are outside of the window. They can't see in. They know that he's there. They can't quite see in, and it's somewhat of a mystery. And so here you see as well, beneath that photo, we've got this, this hexagram structure with 6 lines. I took actually the hexagram of my own personal sun, which is in gate 50. It could have been any hexagram. And it's just really here to demonstrate that in any of the 64 hexagrams, the 5th line, which you can see here with a rectangle here in red, the 5th line is the exalted line. So whichever of the hexagrams, whether you're looking at gate 1, gate 2, all the way to gate 64, the 5th line is the one that is kind of the ruler It's always exalted, and it's because it carries the responsibility of universalizing the message of that particular hexagram. Whatever the theme of that hexagram is, it carries the responsibility of universalizing the message. And ultimately, it carries an expectation of what will be delivered. So one of the things that we're going to really talk about most in this presentation is the theme of projection. And so with the hexagram, with this fifth line, maybe what will deliver, maybe it won't be delivered. But either way, there is an expectation that is carried of what will be delivered. It is always being projected onto by the other that it is capable of delivering whatever that theme is. So wherever you have a fifth line in your design, I mean, beyond having a fifth line profile, any fifth line of your design it's going to be a gate that will be projected on. It will be some kind of a theme that people will project onto you. Those of us who have fifth line profiles, this takes things really to an exponential level because we are constantly being projected upon by others because we carry a tremendous projection field. Whether the fifth line is conscious in your design or unconscious, we are like that figure in that second story window that is constantly receiving projections from the other. So what I did here was break down the 4 different profiles that carry the fifth line. And I just kind of broke them up visually so that you could see that there are 2 that are left angle. So people who are left angle beings carry, they have transpersonal karma. And they will either be a 5-1, so conscious 5, unconscious first line, conscious 5, unconscious second line. And the right angle is a being that has a personal destiny. And for them, the fifth line will be unconscious. So they'll have either the second or the third line conscious, and they'll have the fifth line unconscious. Whenever you're looking at a profile and how it's written in human design, you'll always see the conscious number first and the unconscious number second. The conscious number, so whatever here is in black, represents the personality, who we think we are, whereas the design represents the vehicle, the body, the form. And so whether a fifth line is a conscious fifth line or an unconscious fifth line, it carries an unavoidable, impenetrable projection field. So this was one of the slides that I really had a ton of fun creating. As you can see, there's this kind of projector here with an imp projecting onto a screen, and there is this angel and devil. And you will see as we go further how this kind of translates. Now, just kind of going back to the slide we were looking at before, again, without going too deep into these names of these profiles, what I really wanted to highlight in each of these instances is that whether conscious, whether the 5 is conscious or whether the 5 is unconscious, that carries the theme of the heretic, the heretic. What is a heretic? Oftentimes when we think of that word, it brings up religious connotations, being burned at the stake. And yes, I mean, it definitely carries that energy. But typically, a heretic is somebody who is not really on board with the status quo. They are kind of contrary to the status quo. They can see the flaws in the status quo. They're here ultimately to shake people up and say, don't do this, do that. And helping to kind of decondition what is not working or what is, not helping people and to bring in a new energy that that ultimately is designed to be practical, giving them a practical tool, practical provisions in their time of crisis to fix something. I mean, the fifth lines, we are the great fixers. So some of these themes, okay, because in all of the hexagram lines, whatever your profile, there are many, many different themes. And so I made a slide here with some of the more prevalent, popular, known fifth line themes. And you'll see here this term called genetic continuity. What is genetic continuity? This is something that if you do study human design, you'll hear a lot about it. It is truly kind of brilliant. But for me, the way that I kind of jive with this concept, it's like this thread that kind of continues and plays out in it's, even though there could be these multiple things, it's like this consistent thread. And the fifth line, it doesn't matter which hexagram of the 64 that you look at, there is this consistent thread, this continuity. So these words that are here, they're not by any means exhaustive. There are, I mean, if you look through the Rave I Ching, you can look through all of the 64 hexagrams, but these are some that really tie into main roles. And these are some of the main ways, the main things that are projected onto the fifth line being. So again, whether it's consciously or unconsciously, some people are consciously projected onto, so the 5 1s and the 5 2s, and then the 2 5s and the 3 5s are unconsciously projected onto. You know, there are challenges of both. And so, of course, the heretic, the savior, the hoarder, the general, the femme fatale, the Casanova, irony, rebellion, executor, selfish or selfless, seducer or seduced, rebellion, discipline. So these are some of the many things that are tied to the fifth line profile. So this next slide, it was not comfortable. I'm just giving you a heads up. It was not comfortable for me to put this together just due to the nature of the fifth line and the fifth line kind of enjoying their privacy. But I feel that it kind of makes a bold statement. And so what I did was put together a collage of some photos of me. And it's really to illustrate that fifth line beings, you know, that you may be introduced to a fifth line, you may be even friends with a fifth line, you may consult with a fifth line professionally. I mean, whatever, you know, however that person is in your life, we are actually never truly known. And this quote, it was a great quote from Ra, who said, and then you walk up to the fifth line and you don't see them at all. You see what you long for, what you hope for. So going back to the hexagram and the exalted fifth line of the hexagram, carrying that possibility of what can be delivered. So a fifth line, somebody who has a fifth line profile such as myself, people will look at my photos and they'll see all kinds of things. And I mean, I can tell you for sure, it was so helpful for me to understand what it is to be a fifth line, because now I get it, why people react to me in the way that they do. And how it was used to my disadvantage in the past, how it can be used to not only my advantage, but also other people's advantage moving forward in me understanding the role of the projection field that I carry and not getting lost in it. Because this really is the thing, is that nobody, no matter how close they are to me, will never actually see me. They will always see what it is that they themselves need to see. Something to meditate upon, because it's very, very, very profound. And so this also gave me the opportunity to kind of go back into my collection. At one point, I was really exploring photography, and I was obsessed with putting together these reflective images. And this was, it's an original of mine. And just to illustrate that the fifth line projection field is a hall of mirrors. So you can't know by looking at this image which one of the quadrants is the original quadrant, is the original orientation. Even I don't know at this point which is which. And so there is a purpose. I mean, there really is a huge purpose to the fifth line. And again, the title of this presentation are the gifts and challenges. And one of the gifts of the fifth line is the gift of seduction. So by its very nature, the fifth line will carry a very powerful energy of seduction. Now, when I talk about seduction, I don't necessarily mean sexually seductive. Yes, for sure, a lot of people can project onto both conscious and unconscious fifth lines all kinds of things about them, that they're hot, they're beautiful, they're sexy, they'd make amazing lovers and all of that. I mean, the person might be terrible in bed, but they exude this very seductive energy. But the seduction isn't limited to just that. And so as you can see here, this was another slide that I had a lot of fun putting together. This is an image of a Venus flytrap with a bee, what looks to be like a bee in its mouth. And for those of you who know what a Venus flytrap is, it is a carnivorous plant. This is not me trying to say that us fifth lines reel people in and spit them out. I mean, there may be some that do that, but this is not really the point that I'm trying to get across. What I wanted to really illustrate here is that in nature, you will always find species, either of animals, of plants, that have, it's almost like a strategy to accomplish something. It's like a means to an end. And just like the Venus flytrap has its own strategy of getting nourished, entrapping unsuspecting creatures, insects, we fifth lines, we have this energy of seduction, and it's because it is tied into our role as heretics. So one of the big things, this is a term, this is actually how in my bio, anybody who's ever seen my bio, I call myself a stranger of consequence. And that's because we really are here to, we're mutative beings. I mean, people who cross our path on some level or another, if we're aligned anyways to who we are, sometimes we just provide that missing piece, or there's something that we are able to give to the other that is somewhat life-changing. It's like meeting us can be almost like a fork in the road in terms of your own destiny or whatever. We are impactful messengers. And the whole thing is that we have heresy to not only, it's not even about externalization. The fourth line externalizes. We are really here to universalize. It is like to a larger audience, to a greater public. It's about getting a message out, an unconventional message out that challenges the status quo. So if we didn't have this energy of seduction about us, nobody would be ever drawn to us for us to be able to universalize the heresy. So this is a very cleverly designed energy that helps draw people into our field. And this is, of course, on top of whatever your aura is. Clearly, for a manifester, manifestors are here to have impact. So a fifth line manifester is going to be impactful with that seduction. It's not so much necessarily about drawing people in, but there is that chemistry that occurs for generators, manifesting generators, projectors, reflectors, all of us who are kind of more, we're not here to initiate. This is kind of like that attractive force that really draws people into our field so that when aligned with strategy and authority, we can deliver that message. We can shake things up. We can help decondition the other, recondition them in some way. And ultimately, like I had mentioned before, it is about providing something practical in revolutionary times. We use the term sometimes in times of crisis. The other person isn't always necessarily having a complete meltdown, but we have an energy that people will just come to us. I can't tell you how many times when I'm literally minding my business and doing nothing, that I will get phone calls, texts, emails. Melanie, I don't know why, but I was on my jog and I was just thinking of you, and it's your advice that I need right now. So for me as a fifth line projector, for sure people are going to be coming to me for advice and for counsel and for my seeing. But that fifth line also, once I've been away from somebody for quite some time, I trust now that it's almost like a silent beacon that will draw the right people in for whatever message I need to deliver to them whenever it is that they need it. And so this whole thing is all about the fulfillment of correct projections. We're going to have tons and tons of projections. Not all of them are correct for us to fulfill, but the fifth line seduction as a gift does allow us to fulfill the ones that are correct. Now, the thing that was a huge revelation for me, just huge in my own deconditioning process, was understanding that when I am not aligned to who I am, when I'm really living from the not self, what ends up happening is that my seduction, the healthy seduction, I'm not talking about not self seduction. What ends up happening is that I end up then getting seduced away out of who I am by the other. So that leads us to our next slide, which is all about how the seducer is seduced when out of alignment. Now, this doesn't mean that we can't ever enjoy a romantic relationship with somebody. This really doesn't have to do with that at all. This is about how instead of us being that Venus flytrap, not only for our own, I don't want to say benefit, but I mean, ultimately, this is about our role in getting that heresy out. But what ends up happening is that when we are not aligned to who we are, we end up then getting seduced out of our role. And then, for example, as a projector, I end up getting recognized for all kinds of things that I'm not, and I lose all effectiveness in my role. And so you can see I broke it down here by type. I've got here the fifth line manifester and the way that they get seduced, the generators and the manifesting generators, the projectors and the reflectors. And so what I noticed is that the way that we get seduced is oftentimes by chasing our signature. So each of the types has its own signature. When we're aligned to who we are, it's like our birthright. It's what we naturally live out. But when we're not, we can sometimes chase that thing. And it's through chasing that thing that we then get sucked out and seduced out of who we are. So for a manifestor, they could be chasing that piece that they want so badly. They can also be engineering being answered. So one of the big things for the manifestor, because they're here to initiate, they can oftentimes have a deep fear of getting the ball rolling, sparking something, and nobody answering them or being rejected. And that is something that can really take a fifth line manifester out of who they really are. For the generators and manifesting generators, chasing satisfaction, engineering being asked. Generators and manifesting generators who are here to wait to respond. Their deep fear is that if I don't do something, if I don't initiate, nothing is going to happen. So they can either engineer being asked, they can initiate, all of these things take them out of alignment with who they are. Fifth line projectors, chasing success or engineering being noticed. So this is one of the worst things, looking back over my life and how messed up I have gotten, how much off track I have been taken by chasing success and also trying to get noticed by people. I had zero understanding of my auric frequency, and that as a projector, not only am I designed to be noticed, but as a fifth line projector, there is no way in hell that I will not be noticed. And I remember back in the day, I had a roommate for several years, and he was always saying to me, he's like, what do you mean? Like, everybody's always looking at me. I'm like, nobody. Like, I'm invisible. What are you talking about? And I would laugh at him all the time. But I mean, the joke was really on me because I was completely clueless as to the true nature of my aura, what it was designed for, and how I was really not aligned with its true potential. As far as reflectors go, they can get seduced by chasing surprise. I mean, wanting to outrun that eternal disappointment, and also engineering being accepted. So sometimes finding themselves really in the wrong environments with the wrong people, but doing everything to try to be accepted by those people. And so we end up getting seduced out of who we are. And you can see I've got a body graph here with the open centers. It all ties in. So not only by chasing our signature and by engineering, things in different ways, but it also ties into the not self strategies of the open centers. So if you've got an open or undefined head, this chasing, answering everybody's questions, being indispensable, going down all these rabbit holes, losing focus constantly. With the open or undefined ajna, getting all mentally defensive, being argumentative, trying to win these mental battles, proving to people that you know what you're talking about. The open or undefined throat, trying to be the star. Sometimes it's just about saying too much or doing too much. Undefined or open G center. Oftentimes here there's serious role confusion, but also big time not being in the right place. And I mean, nothing can work for you if you're not in the right place. And there could be many right places for you, but if you're not in that right place, then it's like everything else. It's like a domino effect. And this fixation on finding love and direction, big in terms of seducing you out of who you are. Undefined or open heart center, this overcompensating all of the time because of feeling unworthy and undervalued, trying to prove yourself, improve yourself constantly. The open or undefined solar plexus, this is a huge one, is always trying to be nice, being nice to everybody, avoiding confrontation and truth, just shoving things under the rug, not to make any waves. And then we've got the undefined or open sacral center, not knowing when enough is enough. So specifically here, I mean, obviously generators, manifesting generators will always be defined here, but for the manifestors, projectors, reflectors, we can be super overzealous about everything else that is open in our design, overzealous about caring, overzealous about sex, overzealous about food, overzealous about work, you name it. We can do it and we can overdo it more than anybody. And then lastly, we've got this undefined or open root center and just operating out of pressure, always in a hurry to be free of that pressure. So I can attest 100% that my open centers, I am a single definition splenic projector. So for me, my deepest conditioning are my open centers, and they have 100% through the not self strategies of those open centers, I have been completely seduced out of who I am and into some really just useless situations. And I've learned tremendously from those, especially as I continue to learn more and more about what it is to be a fifth line and how to wield that energy responsibly and in a way that serves myself and others. And so the big thing to understand is that we fifth lines are held hostage equally by praise as we are by criticism. So just like, for example, somebody who is emotionally defined, so they've got a colored in solar plexus. These beings have a consistent emotional wave, always going from hope to despair, despair to hope, up and down and up. And their whole lives, they've been really conditioned to embrace the high end of their wave, to make decisions from that high end of their wave. And because they've been so ostracized for when they're in a bad mood and when they're on a low end of their wave, that they just reject that part of themselves. And so I want to draw a parallel here, because we can get so wrapped up in praise, like, wow. And especially those of us who have undefined heart centers, undefined sacral centers, especially those. And I mean, it could be undefined, whatever, but especially those of us who have the need to prove, for people to then validate us and praise us and tell us we're this and that or the other. This is a complete trap. We are conditioned to reject criticism, but to embrace praise. But I can tell you again, 100%, I have been so entrapped by praise as much as I have been by criticism. So just a question to ask yourself: if you are a fifth line, do you live on a hamster wheel trying to maintain a positive projection? I mean, this is a very profound question. Because we carry this tremendous projection field, people are oftentimes projecting all kinds of things onto us, and we will typically initially attract positive projection. You'll see as we go further into the presentation, I'm going to talk about this, but there is something that happens that will then start to wane. And so there can be this panic that arises in a fifth line being, where you're like, my goodness, I was in this person's good graces. They thought I was the bee's knees. They thought I was incredible and everything. And now, not so much. So what do? We fall back into our not self behaviors in order to uphold the positive projection. What happens? We get seduced away from who we truly are. It really is a hamster wheel. And I encourage you to actually rewind this part and re-listen to it again. How much of your life have you spent trying to uphold, to maintain a positive projection from others if you are a fifth line being? I have been saving this meme for so long, and I was really excited to finally use it. Jim Halpert from The Office: the version of me you created in your mind is not my responsibility. And this is something that is so difficult, but it's the thing that really helps to get us off of that hamster wheel. Understanding that what the other person sees in us has nothing to do with who we are at all. It's like they see this potential in us of what it is that we could deliver to them, to be for them, but it's their trip. It's always their trip. So although reputation is critical to a fifth line being, attachment to the way we're being perceived by others is a complete and utter waste of our life force. Operating in alignment with strategy and authority is protective, and it may save us from getting nailed to the proverbial cross. So going back to that original, when we were talking about heresy earlier, and how when people think about a heretic, they think about that, the person that gets persecuted, nailed to the cross. Well, that happens to us as fifth line beings. We have a very, very fragile reputation. Reputation is a very sensitive thing for us. And it's not about sealing ourselves off in a permanent bubble, but it's really about being aligned to our strategy and authority so that we are correctly fulfilling projections, not running around doing everything for everybody so that everybody loves us. I mean, that is a recipe for burnout. It is a recipe for illness. It is a recipe for not living the life that is meant for you whatsoever. And in that, one of the biggest challenges that I've discovered as a fifth line is that we're living in a world right now that really is geared towards the fourth line being. So fourth line beings are the natural influencers, they are the networkers. And as you can see here, I have one image that's all about networking. You've got people with social media, email, Twitter, text, all of that. And fourth lines are all about that. They're here to create this familiarity and these close relationships with people. Business for a fourth line is all about that network. But as a fifth line, we are not that. We are the lone wolf. And it can be so difficult because we can be so conditioned to act like a fourth line being, but it doesn't work for us. It doesn't work at all. And the reason why it doesn't work at all is because of the projection field. For a fifth line, familiarity breeds contempt. And so unlike a fourth line, who is here to network, who is here to be familiar, making connections, we are here for strangers, always needing kind of this fresh blood, because we are ultimately meant to shake things up and then peace out, deliver our heresy, and then leave. We are here to deliver practical resources in times of crisis. So when we are needed, when somebody really needs something from us, we kind of like pop out from behind the scenes. So in the slide where there were all of those key words, one of the key words was the general. I can't remember if I actually talked about it, but the whole gift of the general is that the general isn't always on the battlefield. The general will be tucked away in their little bunker, but then all of a sudden the general is needed, and then they come out and they get things going. And then once that's done, then they tuck themselves back away. That is really how we are meant to operate as fifth line. So constantly being with other people is not healthy for us, because although the initial projection that people have is positive, when there is prolonged contact with people, what ends up happening is that starts to wane. And the most familiar thing that we'll hear as fifth lines is, I didn't know you were like that, or wow, like that really disappoints me. Or, you could just see that like all of a sudden there's like a crack in the facade, or, the gold is a little bit tarnished. And what happens is that we end up taking that really personally. That's one of the things that then gets us to get back on that hamster wheel when it has nothing to do with us. And it's another sign that is meant to show us that I have just spent too long with this person, because That's what happens when we spend too much time with people. Most people are not meant to be a part of our daily life. It really takes somebody very, very special to be able to be in our aura constantly and just to live alongside us. And the thing to understand is that it's not that it's impossible with other people. It's just that our impact, and I'm not talking about impact from a manifestor perspective. I'm really talking about our impact as fifth line beings, strangers of consequence. We're not going to be effective with that person. So let's just say you are in a relationship with a fifth line. When you met them, it was like so life-changing. And then all of a sudden you're like, wow, this person, yeah, like I'm attracted to them or whatever, but they're really not all that they're cracked up to be. Well, for us also as fifth lines, it's like we can't, whether it is that you need help. I mean, yes, we can come to the rescue when there's something that needs fixing. We're very good with that, being practical, offering you something practical. But in general, our efficiency, our effectiveness with that person who is in our life in the day-to-day on the regular, it just isn't the same. It's not the same at all. And that's why it's especially important with stuff like, your profession, with work. The more time you can spend away from your clients or out of the public eye, all of these things are things that help to make you more effective when it is time to shine. It's kind of like a performance artist that, once a year or once every couple of years, they'll do a tour and you'll be able to go out and you'll be able to see a show and it'll be amazing. And then they'll just kind of drop off the face of the earth. You may not hear anything about them again until they maybe put out another album. So that really is the ultimate for us. We are not here to be constantly, online and commenting on things and trying to make connections and all of that. I mean, it's not that you can't do it, but it definitely shifts the energy. And in fact, don't take my word for it. This is something that I invite you to experiment with yourself. Do you notice that people respond to you or people react to you differently after you have been away from them for a significant amount of time? And another thing too that I want to mention is that the seduction that we were talking about, this seductive energy can oftentimes be mistaken for other things. People can suddenly feel very close to us. They can think that they really know us well. And it's not to say that we can't be friends with people or we can't share intimacy, but it definitely is a different life for a fifth line. And oftentimes our energy can be misunderstood or mistaken for something else. Something that I had no idea about, I mean, I was just so clueless about, was like tying back into, I had told a story earlier about my roommate and how he noticed people noticing me, but I never did. And I mean, I can just be going about my business, literally be doing nothing. And I've had situations where people will consider me a threat. I've done absolutely nothing. Like I've just been my normal self. And it's like, oof, this person, she carries an energy. So it just, if that's ever happened to you, you've been suddenly ostracized or persecuted or blamed for, being a certain way, understanding the power of the projection field. It is not a joke. It's very, very real. And our reputation is fragile. It's very fragile. There's a lot of fifth lines, conscious or unconscious, who literally have had to pack up their life and move elsewhere because people project onto them and they end up having to start over again. Privacy for us generally is important. And it's not about being sneaky or any of that. It's because too much in the public eye really does not work for us. It ends up working against us. And so one of the things that you will hear if ever you do study human design and talking about fifth lines is paranoia. Now, of course, like with anything, everything is this or that. There can be very unhealthily paranoid fifth line beings, but all this to say that there is something that is healthy paranoia for a fifth line. And again, this was another thing where until I knew about it, I didn't even realize that I always did it. And it is this, what do they want from me? Whenever I get a text, whenever I get a message, like I can hear notifications go off on my phone, and immediately I'm like, oh, and I could care about this person a ton, when I find out who it is or whatever, but it's because that's the thing, is that the projection and what is, Melanie, what can Melanie deliver? Melanie's got the answer. Melanie can save me. Melanie's got the solution. It can be really heavy for a fifth line being sometimes to have all of that expectation from other people. So the healthy aspect of that paranoia, what do they want from me? It really gives you the chance to align to strategy and authority. So I happen to be splenic. Those of you who know what splenic authority is that for me, what I can trust is my moment by moment intuitive awareness of what is healthy for me or not. Due to my conditioning, especially due to my undefined root center and my undefined solar plexus wanting to be super nice and of service to everybody and operating out of pressure, I would always be a very, very fast responder. But oftentimes, again, to my detriment, getting seduced away from who I truly am. And now, whenever that comes up, it really gives me that chance to tune into my splenic authority. Is my body moving towards reply or not? And also assessing, what is it that this person wants from me? I used to strive to please everybody, but we are not here for everybody as fifth lines. We are here for the correct others. So this, what do they want from me, really helps me to align to strategy and authority. Also, those of you who have explored a little bit about more advanced topics, if you know what motivation is and how the personality is designed to be motivated, this is something that I've observed in my process, is that healthy fifth line paranoia also allows me to observe as to whether or not the personality is correctly motivated. And there's a lot of, I've seen a lot about this topic. It's a video that I would eventually like to do about motivation and how it actually is tied to our outer authority. So when we're aligned to inner authority, our outer authority will be correctly motivated. And I mean, essentially it ties into which projections are correct for us to fulfill, also protecting our reputation, preserving our impact. And just a little fun fact, for all of us fifth lines, there is truly, I don't know if this applies to all fifth lines, but I know that as a 5-1, the only other profile that can actually salvage my reputation is a 6-2. Because they're like these, the fool on the hill, the authority, the administrator, the trustworthy role model. And I'm very fortunate that my own mother, my best friend, I have several people that are very close to me. They're all 6-2s. And so it is, I mean, it's not to say that this is something that should be engineered, but if you are fifth line, having 6-2s in your life can be very helpful if ever things do go south with your reputation. And obviously no guarantees, but if anybody can help to restore your reputation, it's a 6-2. So just to recap a little bit here, summary. is that the fifth line is a profile of projection. So for us 5-1s, for 5-1s and 5-2s, people are projecting onto our personality. They are seeing things, and we have conscious awareness of the projection field. Whereas for a 2-5 or a 3-5, it's tough because people are always projecting onto them unconsciously. They have no conscious awareness of it. But they oftentimes, I know for sure that the 2-5 and the 3-5, they get very scapegoated, particularly the 3-5. So bringing back that whole hamster wheel thing, I'd be curious if you're watching this and you happen to be a 2-5 or a 3-5, do you yourself also find yourself really trying to please people on some level? Like, have you noticed this situation where there are all of these expectations on you and you can't seem to ever live up to them? It's like, we've got this damned if you do, damned if you don't thing as fifth lines, but I feel fortunate, at least for my 5, to be conscious because I can be aware to the extent that people project onto me. So profile projection, projections of others are not personal. Others see what they need to see in us. The initial projection is typically positive, but will tend to wane with prolonged contact. Hence why it's necessary for us to, well, as you would see later on in this summary, what to do about that. So heading to point number 2 here, our seductive projection field has the purpose of drawing people in so that we can universalize our heresy, get our message out. Most of us, all of us other than manifestors, we really do need to wait. We need to wait for those people to be drawn in. If you're a generator or a manifesting generator, for you to be asked, for a projector, for you to be recognized and invited, for a reflector to be initiated into something by someone, and for that to be correct according to your lunar authority. For all of us, it has to be correct in order to, in alignment with our authority. So important, really important, number 3, to beware of enslavement to praise and criticism. So both of them. And just something to note too, if you happen to have a channel that connects your G center to your throat, so either the 731 channel of the alpha, 1881 creative role model, or the 1333 prodigal, all of us, I happen to be an alpha, and I never knew that when somebody criticizes somebody with one of those channels, it's extra difficult because we literally feel like our identity is being attacked. So just something to keep in mind, that not only do you have this tremendous projection field, but then you've got this extra sensitivity to criticism. So you can try to be working overtime to prop up that positive projection when we got to just let it roll, roll off our backs. So when not aligned to strategy and authority, we're seduced away from who we are, we become ineffective in our role, and are often persecuted. Point number 4, healthy paranoia of the fifth line is protective to our well-being and our reputation. Number 5, it is essential to discern which projections are ours to fulfill and to be selective about the company we keep. Lastly, point number 6, we are here for strangers to pop in and offer practical provisions in times of crisis, and then exit stage left. Speaking of which, it's time for me to go. So thank you for all of you who have been along for the journey today. Did you enjoy this video? If so, more to come when the time is right. And if you have any questions, find me at www.melaniehalpert.com. If you'd like to be notified about future videos and podcasts, then be sure to like and subscribe. Thanks again. See you next time.